What's yoppin', everybody? It's me again, and today we're coming in with the opioids tier list. We got some opioids here, we got some tiers here, and we're gonna be putting the opioids in the fucking tiers. So let's get into this. Let's start off with one of the classics. Let's start off with morphine. Now, morphine, everyone knows what morphine is. It's like an OG opioid, right? And it's described as being I think it's like the most potent naturally derived opiate, which is slightly misleading because most synthetic opioids are going to be stronger than morphine. So the fact that it's the strongest naturally derived opiate doesn't really hold that much weight, in my opinion. But it is one of the classics. It is reliable. It's good medically. It's good for non-medical reasons. It's kind of a good all-around opioid. It's just not like super good at anything. It's kind of just like, it'll get the job done, but if you could probably find something better, you know what I mean? It's more of like well, I can't get the good shit, so I guess we'll stick with morphine. All right. Let's talk about Suboxone. Now, Suboxone is interesting because it's one of the few synthetics that's actually weaker than morphine. And it's actually described as something that can't really get you high, which it can get you high in under two conditions. One, you're not using Suboxone with a preemptive tolerance. So if you're using Suboxone, it's like the first time you've ever used an opioid or something, you'll probably get high off it. The other way you can get high off it is if you combine it with other shit. However, combining things, it's a little risky, probably not the best thing. If you're combining Suboxone, you're better off taking just a different opioid, in my opinion. But, that is to say that Suboxone is never really like fully useless. There's always a reason you can take it. It's good for entering the opioid abuse world and exiting it. So there's really no reason to not take it. So it's kind of an all-around player, and from an aspect of like doing what it's meant to do, it is pretty good at that. So I'm gonna have to give it the S. There's very little downside to it. I would say the main downside to it is it's kind of hard to get unless you're getting it prescribed, because it's not really something that like no drug dealer is going to be like, yeah, bro, I got like 100 Suboxones, like, let me know. Like, that's not really a fucking thing, right? So you kind of got to get it from the doctor, which, that kind of comes with its own sort of, issues. But you know what? Suboxone as a chemical, I think S is fair. All right, let's talk about methadone. Methadone is like the big and beefy Suboxone. It's like Suboxone's older brother on steroids. So the thing about Suboxone, right, is it's made to be a way to quit opioids. And the reason why it's an S tier is because it does that pretty well. Because when you're going from something like, oxycodone and you're switching to Suboxone, like Suboxone's a weaker thing than oxycodone. So there's like a reduction there. When you're going from heroin to methadone, methadone's like, I'm pretty sure it's like slightly more physically addicting than heroin. So, there's kind of some questions there about like, okay, like maybe you quit from heroin to methadone, but then like what's after that? You know what I mean? Like back to heroin? Like, I don't really know, dude. It's a lot more questionable, It's also like non-euphoric, similar to Suboxone, but similar to Suboxone, it can be euphoric under the same circumstances. However, methadone's a lot more dangerous to try and like recreationally use. Something about Suboxone is it's a combination of buprenorphine, which is the opiate, and Narcan, which reverses opiate overdoses. So it's really hard to like actually overdose off Suboxone. Methadone is a lot easier because it's not combined with Narcan, A. And B, it's a lot more strong. So, a lot less of it can do a lot more. And especially if you're not feeling much of the effects, it's easy to take too much thinking that you didn't really take a whole lot, and then bad things can happen. So I don't know, dude. I'm not really a big methadone fan, but I don't think it's F tier. I think, I think it's maybe like a high D, low C, but we'll stick with D for now. All right. Let's talk about heroin. Now, heroin is like the OG opioid. Like, this is like the classic. Like, this is like the classic grandpa of all opioids, right? It's like the king. Like, once you start shooting heroin, like, you've achieved full opioid abuser status. You know what I mean? Now, heroin sort of, in my opinion, it sort of has like the bloodbath effect. You know, like in Geometry Dash, bloodbath is like the most well-known, like, top level. You know what I mean? It's like it's like the most famous like level that was once the number one level. And heroin sort of has that, even though there's like crazier shit out today, just like in, you know, Geometry Dash, there's levels much harder than bloodbath, but bloodbath still has that like classic, like, it has like the aura to it, you know, and heroin has that aura. You know, it does have some drawbacks to it, I will admit, but it is like the best high you'll ever get, like, of all drugs, certainly of all opioids, but of, you know, probably all drugs. So, you know, people don't use it because it feels shitty, let me tell you that. So we're gonna give it the A status. You know, if it had lesser drawbacks, it would be up with Suboxone in the S tier. Because of the drawbacks, we do gotta consider that, you know. All right, let's talk about Percocets. Now, Percocets, they're pretty good. They're pretty damn good. I'll tell you that much. In terms of like prescription pills, it's probably like the number one like prescription opioid that you can abuse and reasonably obtain. The main drawback of Percocets is they're a little pricey if you're getting the non-fentanyl version, and B, they like, Percocets is a mixture of oxycodone, which is the opioid, but also Tylenol. So if you take like five what's it called? If you take five Percocet tablets, regardless of the amount of opioid you're actually getting, and you're getting 5 doses of Tylenol. So you kind of have to consider that when you're abusing them. Like, you can't be taking them too much because you're going to get too much Tylenol, right? Like, who cares about the opioid aspect? The real risk here is the fucking Tylenol, and that should be like the main concern when overdosing, like, of an overdose, is like, well, how much fucking like tablets did you take? Because many Percocets that people get prescribed are 5 to 10 milligrams. There is some 30s out there. You can get them prescribed, but like what's commonly available, right, to like the average user, most likely is going to be the 5 to 10 milligrams. So you can only really get so much before you're playing kind of a risky game, kind of like, you know, you are putting your vital organs at some serious risk. However, it is a pretty good high. It is probably the best high of, you know, the main prescriptions, but, you know, there is some issues with that. So I'm going to put it in the A tier. It would be in the S tier if it was not for the Tylenol drawback, but because of that, we're going to have to stick with the A tier. All right, let's talk about hydrocodone, hydros. Hydros is just the shitty perks, all right? It's just like, it's a shittier high and worse side effects, you know? I don't know. I've never really been like a big hydros person. I was always more into the perks. But you know, hydros do have their value. I will give them that. They are not useless. You know, they can get the job done for sure. I just think they're just like, why would anyone ever choose hydros over perks, right? Like, why? It's just like a strictly worse option. So we're gonna go with the B tier with that. All right, let's talk about codeine. Codeine, in terms of its pure form, it's pretty dog shit, let me tell you. It's just shit, okay? People will say many things about it. If you want to use codeine, there's one way to do it, and that's with lean. We'll get to that later. But in terms of, like, pure codeine or codeine pills, like, nah, bro, that's straight doots. Like, I'm not fucking with it. It's going in the F tier for that. All right, let's talk about tianeptine. And this shit right here, the Zaza Reds. And if you don't know what tianeptine is, it's sort of like this weird designer drug thing. It's actually an atypical antidepressant that has opioid-like effects. And the reason this is significant is that it's not primarily an opioid. It's literally primarily an antidepressant, and it just happens to have opioid-like effects. So we're starting off on not the best footing here because, is sort of like implies that it's not super opioidy, if that even makes sense. But because it's not opioidy, it's, I mean, you can definitely tell, like, it's kind of a member of the family, but, like, not really. And it's sort of like, I don't know, dude. The high you get off it, you don't really get that classic, like, sedated sort of, like, pain relief feel. You get more of, like, a euphoria. And it's, like, kind of weird to explain. It feels good, but, like, it's not really like an opioid, right? Like, you can tell it's a designer drug. You can tell this shit has not been fully criminalized because the high just isn't, like, quite the best. It's also kind of a questionable drug. It's kind of been known for not the greatest things, like, contaminated products and stuff. And also, if you get some of this stuff mailed to your house and your mom opens the box, she might not be super happy with you. And we had to learn that one the hard way. So we're putting that one in the F tier. It's just too not opioidy to be anywhere besides the F tier. You know what I mean? All right. Let's talk about the other designer drug. Let's talk about 7-O. 7-O is like a synthetic sort of version of kratom, where they basically, like, 7-O is like the specific alkaloid in kratom leaf that gives it like the opiate like effects. And in kratom leaf, it's found in trace amounts, so you're not getting a super strong effect. You're getting a pretty diluted effect. But 7-O is like, fuck it, dude. Let's just purify that one alkaloid that's responsible for all the opiate effects and just make, like, super kratom. And that's basically what the fuck happened. It's described as being like 13 times stronger than morphine, which morphine on its own, not the strongest thing, admittedly, but 13 times morphine, that has some weight to its name. We can work with that a little more, you know what I mean? However, I think the main drawback here is that is kind of a, it is a designer drug, and you can it has like this shitty effect, if that makes sense. Like, the high off it is just kind of shitty. And, like, distillate is like 90% THC, but it gives you a shittier high than, like, just like plant matter that's like 10% THC. It's sort of like the same thing, where it's like, you're 13 times stronger than morphine, but you're not 13 times better than morphine. I would honestly say that a morphine or Percocet high probably feels better than a 7-O high, even though 7-O is stronger. The thing is, though, 7-O is fucking way cheaper than Percocets or morphine, especially if you're not able to get Percocets or morphine prescribed. 7-O is like way, way, way cheaper than any of the other prescriptions. So I don't know, dude. I think it's like, it's got some good but some bad, so we'll just put it in C. I think one of the primary reasons that it's not going any higher than C, though, is because it's very chase the dragony. The first time, it'll feel like pretty on par with the Percocet. Every subsequent time, it'll feel worse and worse and worse. And I don't like that effect for 7-O specifically is very pronounced. I don't really feel that with other opiates. All right, let's talk about fentanyl. And we're going to be starting off with the non-lethal dose. This one is the lethal dose. This one's the non-lethal dose. We're going to be ranking it based off the non-lethal dose standard. This is because fentanyl is sort of like a dual drug. And some people can take fentanyl and they have a tolerance. They've been using this shit. So when they use fentanyl, it's a very different thing than when, a first-time user who's getting laced accidentally takes a lethal dose and fucking dies. So I just figured, like, look, it just makes more sense to rank these two things separately. Now, for non-lethal doses of fentanyl, here's the thing, right? We have to eliminate the aspect of overdose and death when we rank this. And those are the two primary negative effects of fentanyl that get used to say, like, oh, this is why fentanyl is bad, because it kills people and causes overdoses. Well, if we're excluding those two factors from the ranking, things start to look kind of pretty for fentanyl. And, one of the things is that it is dirt cheap, dude. It's cheaper than fucking 7-O. It's cheaper than Zaza Reds, dude. It's cheaper than groceries, dude. It's cheaper than a banana, okay? You could get like 5 fentanyl pills for the price of like a third of a banana, okay? Like, this shit is like the most affordable drug addiction ever. And, you know, if you're able to handle, you know, what, like, the true nature of fentanyl, you know, I mean, is it really that bad of an option? I mean, you know, it's a pretty severe dependence that you're going to form. And, you know, I haven't quit fentanyl. I haven't really started fentanyl either, but, you know, I haven't quit it. And, you know, I can only imagine, you know, what that would be like. You know, who even knows if methadone would, you know, even be useful in that scenario. But I don't know. People do it. So it is possible. But I don't think it's like, probably better off not experiencing that. But other than that, I mean, it is cheap. Not the best high. It is a shitty high because you almost get too high off it and you can't even really enjoy the high. But I don't know, dude. I'm thinking like maybe between B and C. Maybe I'm leaning towards B. I think it's slightly better than 7.0, but like it's like barely any better, right? Like this is like what's it called? Like a 79%, and fentanyl is like a 81%. So 7.0 is like a C plus, and fentanyl is like barely a B minus. All right, let's talk about fentanyl in the lethal dose scenario. Now here's the thing about it. You know, is definitely going to be ranked a little worse than a non-lethal dose, mainly because now we have to consider the two primary negatives of fentanyl. But the thing is, you know, it is like the one opiate, a lethal dose of fentanyl is the one opiate on this list that will keep you high for the rest of your life. And some fates are worse than death. So from that perspective, like it's not like the bottom of the barrel, you know, it's the second worst thing. So it's going to be going in the D tier. All right, let's talk about Opana. Now, Opana is oxymorphone, not oxycodone, oxymorphone, different thing. And I've never tried this. I heard it's used in hospitals, but I am unsure about like why a hospital would use Opanas instead of perks or hydros or something like, you know, a little more tame, because this stuff is, you know, from my understanding, way stronger than Percocets or morphine or any of that stuff. Opanas is like, you know, like the super Percocet basically. And I heard that this is arguably even better than heroin. It feels like, you know, even more euphoric. And, you know, I did hear it was a bit of an acquired taste. So, you know, heroin's probably like the flat, like general standpoint of being the best high. But this has potential to be an even better high if you have the taste buds for it. You know, the thing is I don't know how the fuck you get it, because you know, you can't find the shit on the streets, because everyone on the streets is just going to manufacture the cheapest shit, which is definitely not Opanas. And B, you know, you can't get it on the streets, and I don't know how the fuck to get it prescribed, because I feel like most doctors are going to lean towards a weaker opioid or hydromorphone, which is the next drug we'll rank, which is Diludiad or whatever, however the fuck you say it. But anyway, let's stick with Opanas for now. So I don't really know how to get Opanas, because you're kind of stuck getting this shit, either this shit or some other prescription shit. But if you do get it, it is the wet dream opioid. It's, you know, if I ever get the opportunity to do it, I'll probably end up trying it, just because, like, I can't not try something like that after hearing its legendary status. All right, let's talk about hydromorphone. It's basically, you know, like the relationship between Percocets and hydros. The same sort of relationship exists between hydromorphone and oxymorphone. It's just this shittier version. However, hydromorphone is more accessible, especially through a doctor. The way you get it is you say you're allergic to Tylenol. Percocets and hydros and most low-level prescription opioids are cut with Tylenol. So it's like part opioid, part Tylenol. Hydromorphone is not cut with Tylenol. So if they have reason to avoid giving you Tylenol, like you're allergic to Tylenol or something, then they're going to give you the good shit. So, you know, that's how to get that shit right there. So that's how to get that. And that does give it some accessibility that, you know, Opanas just don't really have. So that's about that. All right. Last but not least, let's talk about lean. Now, here's the thing. Lean is, you know, a unique thing, because check out this bottle here. It contains 7% alcohol, and it contains promethazine. So you're getting a triple whammy here. You're getting codeine, the opioid, you're getting alcohol, which synergizes with opioids, and you're getting promethazine, which also synergizes with opioids. So you get this sort of like concoction, like synergy effect. And it gives you a way better high than any other opioid on this list that I've tried. You know, I haven't quite tried heroin or Alpanas yet, so I don't know how this would compare to something like that. But what I do know is that for the low level, like tamer opioids, you know, lean is probably the best feeling one. It's expensive as fuck on the street. The streets, you know, ruined it. Basically, if you want to sip lean, you got to go to a doctor these days because the street prices are just out of control. But if you can get that prescription, you're in for a good time, dude. The only reason why you wouldn't want lean and you would go for Percocets or you would go for hydros is if you have enough of a tolerance where lean just ain't doing the trick. You need something, you know, a little stronger, a little more pure, and a little less diluted. Now, because of that, I think it's going in the S tier. I think it's granted the S tier rating. So anyway, boys, I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.